I had 60 seconds to decide if the woman folding my dead wife's blanket was a saint or a thief. $5,000 sat on the mahogany table. My father's Rolex. 3 credit cards, all untouched. The hidden camera recorded everything. Her trembling hands, the way she stopped breathing when she saw the money, how her fingers didn't even twitch toward it. Instead, Grace Thompson did something that made my chest constrict. She picked up the blanket I'd knocked to the floor, unfolded it with surgical precision, draped it across my supposedly sleeping body with a tenderness I hadn't felt in 5 years. Her whisper cut through the darkness. "You don't deserve to be this alone." Then she straightened Helen's photograph, the one I'd turned face down in my grief, and walked away from enough money to save her dying daughter. I opened my eyes to an empty room and a truth that would destroy everything I thought I knew about trust. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. 6 weeks earlier, I'd been a different man, not happier, just more numb. My name is Robert Harrison, 60 years old, CEO of Harrison Medical Devices, a company my grandfather started in a garage in 1952. Third generation, $500 million in annual revenue, 12 bedrooms in a Boston estate that echoed with ghosts. Helen died 5 years ago. Cancer, they said. Took her in 8 months, from diagnosis to that final morning when I found her cold beside me. Our son Michael came to the funeral, stayed 3 days, then flew back to California. He calls twice a year now, Christmas and my birthday. Each conversation lasts exactly 4 minutes. I eat dinner alone every night at a table built for 20. 2 place settings. One for me, one for Helen's photograph in its silver frame. I pour her wine, cut her portion of whatever Martha's prepared. Then I scrape it into the trash and tell myself I'm fine. I'm not fine. 10 years ago, my executive assistant, a woman I'd trusted for 15 years, downloaded our proprietary designs and sold them to our competitor. Cost us $40 million and nearly bankrupted the company. I rebuilt. But something in me stayed broken. Trust became impossible. Everyone had an angle. Everyone wanted something. That's what I told myself when Martha said we needed to hire help. Martha Green, 68. She's been our head housekeeper for 40 years, since before I was born. My father hired her when she was barely out of her teens. She knows this house better than I do. Lately, I'd noticed her squinting at labels, holding things closer to her face. Cataracts, probably. She'd never admit it. Just one person, she'd insisted. Live in. Someone to help with the heavy work. I'd refused. The last thing I needed was a stranger in Helen's home, touching her things, sleeping in rooms that still smelled like her perfume. Then Tom Bailey changed my mind. Tom was 55, our driver and groundskeeper. Former firefighter, built like an oak tree and twice as stubborn. He came to my study one October morning with his cap in his hands. "Mr. Harrison, I have a favor to ask." I'd known Tom for 10 years. He'd never asked for anything. "There's a woman, Grace Thompson, widow, good woman. Her husband David was on my squad. Died saving a family from a fire 3 years back." Tom's voice cracked. "She's got a little girl. Medical bills are drowning her. She needs work, honest work." I should have said no. But something in Tom's eyes, guilt maybe, or grief, made me hesitate. "One interview," I said. "No promises." Tom nodded. "That's all I'm asking, sir. Just a chance." That chance would cost me everything I thought I knew about safety, about walls, about keeping the world at arm's length. Because Grace Thompson walked into my study 3 days later, and nothing was ever the same. She arrived on a Thursday afternoon in October, when the trees were bleeding gold and the air smelled like endings. Martha brought her to my study. I was reviewing quarterly reports, pretending the numbers mattered, pretending I cared about profit margins when I couldn't remember the last time I'd cared about anything. "Mr. Harrison, this is Grace Thompson." I looked up. The woman standing in my doorway was maybe 32, 33. Blonde hair pulled back in a braid that had seen better days. She wore a gray cardigan with a small hole near the left elbow, jeans that were clean but faded, and shoes. God, those shoes. The soles were peeling away from the leather, held together with what looked like super glue. But it was her eyes that stopped me. Blue-gray, like storm clouds over the Atlantic. And sad, unbearably sad. She didn't look at the Persian rug or the first edition books or the Monet hanging above the fireplace. She looked at me, direct, unflinching. "Mrs. Thompson," I said, standing. "Please sit." "Miss?" she corrected quietly. "I mean, it's Mrs., but my husband passed. I just go by Grace now." She sat on the edge of the leather chair like she was afraid she might damage it, her hands folded in her lap. No rings, except a simple gold band on her left hand. Wedding ring. Still wearing it after 3 years. I knew that weight. "Tom tells me you're looking for work." "Yes, sir. I can clean, cook, organize. I'm thorough, quiet. I won't disturb you." Too quiet, I thought. Too perfect. "Do you have experience in household management?" A pause. "I've worked various jobs. Cleaning offices, restaurants. I learn quickly." "References?" She handed me a single sheet of paper. 3 names. I recognized none of them. Small businesses, probably. Places that paid under the table. "Tom mentioned you have a daughter." Her face changed, softened and hardened at the same time. "Lily. She's 7. She has asthma. Requires daily medication and monitoring." Grace's voice stayed steady, but her hands tightened in her lap. "I need to be available for her. But I work hard, Mr. Harrison. I'll earn every dollar you pay me. The position is live-in, room and board included, $2,000 a month." I watched her face. Most people would have jumped at it. She just looked at me with those storm cloud eyes. "My daughter would need to come with me." "There are 14 bedrooms in this house, Mrs. Thompson. 13 of them are empty. Pick whichever you'd like." She swallowed. "I need to think about it. Taking Lily from her school, her routine. There's an excellent private school 10 minutes from here. I'll cover tuition." Now she looked startled. Suspicious, even. "Why would you do that?" Good question. Why was I doing this? Tom had asked for a favor, sure. But this felt like more. Like I was testing something. Or maybe just lonely enough to let another human being into this mausoleum I called home. Because Tom vouches for you. And I trust Tom. It was partially true. I did trust Tom. But I'd learned to verify everything. Grace stood. "May I have until tomorrow to decide?" "Of course." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Mr. Harrison, if I take this position, I'd prefer to earn my first month's pay before accepting any advance. No offense intended, but I need to know I've worked for it." And there it was, the red flag, the thing that made the hairs on my neck stand up. Nobody refuses money. Nobody turns down an advance when they're drowning in medical bills and living in a house about to be foreclosed, unless they're planning to take more later, unless they're patient enough to play the long game. I'd seen it before. 15 years of loyalty before the knife in the back. "As you wish," I said, evenly. She nodded and left. Martha appeared in the doorway 30 seconds later. "Well?" "Did you see her shoes, Martha?" I saw a woman with more pride than sense, and a daughter who needs her. Or a woman who knows exactly how to play the sympathy card. Martha crossed her arms. That look. the one she'd given me since I was a boy sneaking cookies before dinner. "Robert Harrison, when did you become so cold?" "When trusting people cost me $40 million and nearly destroyed everything my family built." That was one person, one mistake. One is enough. But despite my words, despite every instinct screaming danger, I called Grace Thompson the next morning and offered her the job. She accepted. She and her daughter moved in 3 days later, carrying everything they owned in 2 battered suitcases, and that's when the test really began. They arrived on a gray Sunday morning when the first snow was threatening, and the house felt colder than usual despite the heating system that cost more than most people's cars. Grace drove up in a Toyota with a cracked windshield and a muffler held on with wire. She parked near the service entrance like Martha had instructed, and I watched from my bedroom window as she helped her daughter out of the back seat. Lily Thompson was small for 7, dark hair, where her mother's was blonde. She wore a pink winter coat that was too thin for New England weather and carried a stuffed rabbit that had been loved nearly to death. One of its ears was missing. The girl looked up at the house and her mouth formed a perfect O. Grace bent down, said something I couldn't hear. Lily nodded solemnly, then took her mother's hand. Martha met them at the door. I stayed upstairs, pretending to work on emails, actually watching the driveway camera feed on my laptop like the paranoid old man I'd become. 20 minutes later, there was a knock on my study door. "Come in." Grace entered alone. She'd changed into what I assumed were her work clothes, black pants, a simple white blouse, her hair still in that braid. She looked tired, drawn. "Mr. Harrison, I wanted to thank you. The room it's more than generous." "Which one did you choose?" "The one at the end of the east wing, the one with the window seat overlooking the garden. Lily loves it." She paused. "Martha said it used to be a nursery." My throat tightened. A long time ago. Helen had prepared that room 25 years ago when we'd been expecting our first child. She'd painted clouds on the ceiling herself, installed blackout curtains for naps, chosen the softest carpet she could find. The baby, a girl, was stillborn at 32 weeks. We'd never used the room. Never even went in there after that day. When Michael was born 2 years later, Helen had insisted on a different room entirely. "If you'd prefer we choose another—" "No," I said quickly. "It's fine. It should be used. That's what Helen would have wanted." Grace tilted her head slightly, like she was studying me. "Your wife had good taste. The room is beautiful." "Had is correct. She's been gone 5 years." "I know. Martha told me. I'm sorry for your loss." The words were standard, expected, but something in her voice, genuine sorrow, recognition, made them land differently. "And I'm sorry for yours," I said. "Tom mentioned your husband died saving people from a fire." Her hand went unconsciously to her wedding ring, turning it. "He did. David was. He was the kind of man who ran toward danger, not away from it. 5 people got out of that building because of him." "That must be some comfort." "It is, and it isn't." She met my eyes. "Knowing he died doing something heroic doesn't make the bed any less empty, Mr. Harrison." The honesty of it struck me. Most people offered platitudes, smoothed over the rough edges of grief. Grace just said it plain. Before I could respond, there was a small voice from the hallway. "Mommy?" Grace turned. "In here, sweetheart." Lily appeared in the doorway, still clutching the one-eared rabbit. She looked at me with enormous brown eyes. "Are you the sad man Mommy talks about in her sleep?" The room went silent. Grace's face flushed crimson. "Lily, that's not... we don't..." She looked at me, mortified. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Harrison. She doesn't understand." But I was staring at this 7-year-old child who'd just gutted me with a single sentence. I talk about Mr. Harrison in my sleep? Lily nodded seriously. You say he's so lonely, and someone should help him, and sometimes you cry. Grace looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her. Lily, why don't you go back to our room and unpack your clothes? I'll be there in a minute. Okay, bye, sad man. Lily waved at me with the rabbit's remaining paw and disappeared. Grace stood frozen. Mr. Harrison, I don't know what to say. I might have mentioned you to Tom once, and maybe I was thinking about it when I fell asleep, but I certainly didn't mean to. It's all right, I said. Though my hands were shaking slightly, I clasped them behind my back. Children say what they observe. No filter. Still, it was inappropriate. I apologize. Don't. The word came out sharper than I intended, softer. Don't apologize for caring, if that's what it is. God knows there's little enough of that in this house. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and I had the unsettling feeling she could see straight through to all the broken parts I kept hidden. Lily's very perceptive, Grace said quietly. Too much so, sometimes. She sees things other people miss, like sadness, like loneliness. She knows what it looks like because we've been living with it for 3 years. There was that honesty again. Raw. Unvarnished. I should let you get settled, I said, retreating behind formality. If you need anything, Martha can help. You start officially tomorrow, but today is just for adjusting. Thank you, Mr. Harrison. She started to leave, then paused, turned back. For what it's worth. Lily's usually right about people, and if she thinks you're sad, it's because she recognizes it, not because she pities you. Then she was gone, leaving me alone in my study with quarterly reports I no longer cared about, and a 7-year-old's observation that had stripped me bare. He's so lonely. Someone should help him. I walked to the window and watched the first snowflakes begin to fall. Down in the garden I could see the corner of Helen's rose bushes, now dormant for winter. I'd kept them maintained for 5 years, but hadn't been able to bring myself to actually tend them. That had been her joy, her sanctuary. Martha appeared at my door an hour later. The girl found Helen's old piano. My blood went cold. And? She asked if she could play it. I told her to ask you first. I'd locked the music room after Helen died. Couldn't bear the sight of that Steinway sitting silent. Helen had played every evening before dinner. Chopin, Debussy, her beloved Clair de Lune. Tell her no. Robert, tell her no, Martha. That room stays locked. But that night, lying in my too large bed, I could have sworn I heard a single piano note echo through the house. Middle C. Helen's favorite starting note. I told myself I'd imagined it. The first 2 weeks passed in careful silence. Grace worked like a ghost. I'd come downstairs to find the east wing spotless, fresh flowers in vases I didn't remember owning, the scent of lemon polish in the air. She moved through the house so quietly I sometimes forgot she was there until I'd turn a corner and find her folding linens or dusting bookshelves with that same careful precision. She refused every tip. Tom tried to slip her $40 for helping him move furniture. She handed it back. Martha left an envelope with a $100 bonus on her dresser for exceptional work. Grace returned it with a polite note. I'm paid fairly. I don't need extra. It was unnatural, suspicious. I started watching the security cameras more closely. Not just the test I'd planned, but constant monitoring. I told myself it was prudent, necessary. Really, I was looking for the crack in the facade, the moment when the mask would slip. It never did. Instead, I witnessed things that made my carefully constructed suspicions harder to maintain. Week 2, Tuesday morning, 3 a.m. Grace in Helen's garden, on her knees in the cold, carefully removing dead growth from the rose bushes. She worked by moonlight, her breath frosting in the October air, treating each plant like it was precious. When she finished, she sat back on her heels and whispered something I couldn't hear through the camera. It looked like, "I'll take care of him." Thursday afternoon, Lily having an asthma attack in their room. I heard it through the vents. That distinctive wheeze, the panic in Grace's voice as she grabbed the inhaler, counted breaths, rubbed her daughter's back in slow circles. "That's it, baby. In through your nose, out through your mouth. You're okay. Mommy's here." The attack lasted 20 minutes. Grace never called for help, never asked for anything. Just held her daughter and sang softly until Lily could breathe again. Friday evening. I came downstairs late, couldn't sleep, found Grace in the kitchen at 11 p.m., not eating, just sitting at the table with her head in her hands. She didn't know I was watching. She pulled out a calculator and a stack of bills, typed numbers, erased them, typed again. Then she put her face down on the table and her shoulders shook, silent crying, the kind that comes from being so exhausted you can't even make sound anymore. I should have felt vindicated. See? She's desperate. Desperate people do desperate things. Instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Shame. Then, Victoria Pemberton arrived, and everything shifted. Vicky had been part of my life for 20 years. Her father, James Pemberton, had been my father's business partner until James died of a heart attack when Vicky was 22. I'd given her a job, mentored her, watched her rise to executive director of Harrison Medical. She was brilliant, ruthless, and had never married despite a string of unsuccessful relationships. She arrived for our quarterly board meeting on a Wednesday, sleek in a charcoal suit that cost more than Grace made in 6 months. Her black Mercedes pulled up to the front entrance at exactly 9 a.m. I met her in my study. "Robert." She kissed my cheek, left a trace of expensive perfume. "You look tired." "I'm 60, Vicky. Tired is the default setting." She laughed, but her eyes were already scanning the room, taking inventory. She'd always been observant. "New housekeeper? How did you—" "The flowers. Helen used to arrange them that way. Roses from the garden, not store-bought." Vicky's voice had an edge I couldn't quite identify. "Who is she?" "Grace Thompson. Tom recommended her." "The driver recommended your household staff?" Vicky raised an eyebrow. "That's unlike you. She needed work." "She's competent." "I'm sure she is." Vicky set her briefcase down, pulled out quarterly reports, but her attention wasn't on the numbers. "Where is she now?" "Upstairs with her daughter, I imagine." "Why does it matter?" "It doesn't. I'm just curious about the woman who's managed to get past your guard." "She hasn't gotten past anything," I said, more defensively than I intended. "She's an employee." "Of course." Vicky smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Shall we go over the third quarter numbers?" We worked through lunch. Profit margins were up, the new surgical device line was performing well, and our stock price had climbed 8%. I should have been pleased. Instead, I kept thinking about Grace in the kitchen, crying over bills she couldn't pay. At 2 p.m., Grace knocked softly and entered with a tray. Tea service, small sandwiches, the good china. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said quietly. "Martha said you usually have tea at this time." Vicky's gaze locked onto Grace like a hawk spotting prey. "How thoughtful. You must be the new addition to the household." "Grace Thompson, ma'am." Grace set the tray down without looking up. "Victoria Pemberton. I've known Robert for 20 years. The emphasis on 20 was deliberate, territorial. "It's nice to meet you, Miss Pemberton." "It's Ms., actually. Never found a man worth marrying." Vicky's smile was razor sharp. "And you're a widow, I understand?" Grace's hand went to her wedding ring. "Yes, ma'am." "How tragic. And you have a child?" A daughter, Lily, she's 7. It must be difficult raising a child alone. Lucky Robert took you in. The condescension in Vicky's voice made my jaw tighten. Grace noticed it too. I saw her spine straighten slightly, but she just nodded. I'm very grateful for the opportunity. If you'll excuse me. Grace left as quietly as she'd entered. The door had barely closed before Vicky spoke. Robert, tell me you ran a background check. She came recommended by your driver. Not exactly rigorous vetting. Vicky leaned forward. Do you know anything about her? Where she's from? Why she's really here? She's here because she needs work, and I have work that needs doing. She's here because she's a young widow with a sick child, and you're a wealthy widower with a savior complex. Vicky's voice softened. I'm not trying to be cruel. I'm trying to protect you. You're too trusting, Robert. You always have been. I'm not trusting anyone. I'm employing someone. Like you employed Amanda? The name hit like a physical blow. Amanda Kerrigan. My assistant for 15 years. The woman who'd stolen our designs nearly bankrupted us and disappeared with $40 million. That was different. Was it? Amanda was competent, professional. You never suspected her either, not until it was too late. Vicky reached across the desk, put her hand on mine. Let me look into Grace Thompson, just a basic check. If she's exactly who she says she is, fine. But if there's anything you should know. I pulled my hand away. Fine, but discreetly. Always. Vicky left at 4. I went to find Martha. She was in the kitchen with Grace and Lily. The 3 of them were making cookies, flour dusting the counter, Lily's laughter echoing off the copper pots hanging from the ceiling. They stopped when I entered. Mr. Harrison, Grace said, wiping her hands on a towel. We were just... Lily wanted to make something for Tom. He's been kind to her. Lily held up a misshapen cookie. It's supposed to be a truck, but it looks like a potato. It's perfect, I said, and meant it. Martha watched me with that knowing look again, the one that said I was being an idiot about something. That night, I set up the test. $5,000 in cash from my safe, my father's Rolex, not the one I wore daily, but the vintage 1965 Submariner worth $50,000, my wallet with 3 credit cards. All of it arranged casually on the coffee table in the living room, like I'd emptied my pockets and forgotten about it. I positioned myself on the sofa with a book and a half-empty glass of scotch. Set my phone timer for 10 p.m., when Grace usually did her final rounds of the house, and waited. At 9:47, I heard her footsteps in the hall. Soft, careful. I closed my eyes, slowed my breathing, let the book slip from my hand onto my chest. Every muscle in my body was tense, despite the appearance of sleep. The footsteps stopped. I felt, rather than heard, her presence in the doorway, the slight change in air pressure, the catch of breath, 10 seconds, 20, 30, then footsteps approaching. My heart hammered. This was it. The moment that would prove I'd been right to be suspicious, right to keep my walls up, right to trust no one. The footsteps stopped directly beside the coffee table. Silence. I waited for the sound of her picking up the money, the watch, the wallet. Waited for confirmation that everyone could be bought, everyone had a price, everyone... Fabric rustled. But not from the table, from the chair across the room. My eyes wanted to open, but I kept them shut, kept breathing steadily. Grace's footsteps moved closer, not to the money, to me. Something soft and warm settled over my chest and shoulders. A blanket. She was covering me with a blanket. Her fingers, gentle, so gentle, brushed the hair back from my forehead. a touch so tender it made my throat close. Then her voice, barely a whisper, "You don't deserve to be this alone." I heard her move to the table. This was it. This was when the sound of wood scraping wood. She was moving something. My photograph of Helen, the one that had been knocked over when I'd staged the scene. Grace was setting it upright. "I'll try to help him," she whispered, so quietly I almost missed it. I promised I would. Who had she promised? When? Her footsteps retreated. The living room door closed softly. I lay there for 10 full minutes before I opened my eyes. The money sat untouched. The watch gleamed in the lamplight. My wallet remained exactly where I'd left it. But I was covered in Helen's favorite throw blanket, the cashmere one from Scotland that I hadn't been able to touch since she died. And Helen's photograph stood straight, her smile seeming to look directly at me. I got up, went to my study, and pulled up the security footage, watched it 3 times. Each time, I saw the same thing. Grace stopping in the doorway. Her face when she saw the money. Pain, not greed. Recognition, not temptation. She looked at that cash like it was a test she was tired of taking. She'd read the medical file that had fallen to the floor. I saw her lips move, reading the diagnosis. Saw the moment she understood. Her hand had gone to her mouth. Her eyes had filled with tears. For me, a stranger, a man who'd been nothing but coldly polite to her. The way she'd covered me with the blanket, adjusted my position so my neck wouldn't cramp, that was medical training. I'd bet my company on it. She knew exactly what she was doing, and that whispered promise. "I'll try to help him." I promised I would. I picked up the phone and called the investigator I'd used when we had the security breach. "Marcus, Robert Harrison, I need a complete background check on someone. Grace Eleanor Thompson, 32, currently residing at my estate. Everything. Employment history, financial records, medical licenses." "Medical licenses? Just check everything. I need it fast. I can have preliminary results in 48 hours. Complete workup in a week." "Do it." I hung up and poured myself another scotch. Grace Thompson was either the most genuine person I'd met in a decade or the most dangerous con artist I'd ever encountered. And God help me, I was starting to hope it was the former. Because when I closed my eyes, I could still feel the ghost of her fingers brushing my forehead, could still hear her whisper in the darkness. "You don't deserve to be this alone." She was right. I didn't deserve to be this alone. But I'd built these walls for a reason. And 48 hours from now, I'd know whether Grace Thompson was someone who could be trusted with the truth, or someone I needed to protect myself from. Either way, something had shifted. The test I'd designed to catch a thief had instead revealed something far more complicated. I'd wanted to catch Grace taking something. Instead, she'd given me something I'd forgotten I needed. Kindness. The question now was whether I had the courage to accept it. The report arrived on Friday morning in a plain manila envelope. I took it to my study, locked the door, and sat at my desk for 5 full minutes before opening it. Marcus Chen was thorough, always had been. The file was 63 pages long. I started reading. Grace Eleanor Thompson, born March 15th, 32 years ago in Burlington, Vermont. Parents deceased. Father died in a car accident when she was 12, mother from complications of diabetes when Grace was 19. One sister, Sarah, 3 years older, deceased 8 years ago from heroin overdose. Educational history: full scholarship to Johns Hopkins University, pre-med, graduated summa cum laude, accepted to Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, top 5% of her class. Surgical residency, neurosurgery track, then everything stopped. 8 years ago, Dr. Grace Thompson's medical license was suspended then revoked. Reason: patient death during surgery. I turned the page with hands that had started shaking. The patient's name was Margaret Chen, 42 years old, mother of 3. Cerebral aneurysm emergency surgery required. Grace had been the resident on duty, supervised by an attending physician. During the procedure, an aneurysm clip failed. Catastrophic bleeding. Patient died on the table. The investigation had been extensive. I read through depositions, expert testimonies, engineering reports. The clip, Model AC-7, manufactured by Harrison Medical Devices, my company. The room tilted. I kept reading, even though every word felt like a nail in my coffin. The clip had been made with a metal alloy that was cheaper than our standard specification. Engineering had flagged it as potentially prone to metal fatigue under stress. The recommendation had been to use the original, more expensive material. Someone had overridden that recommendation. I flipped to the approval signature. Robert J. Harrison. My signature. Oh, my decision. I'd signed off on the cheaper material to increase profit margins by 12%. I remembered the meeting. Vicky had presented the cost analysis. Our CFO had agreed. I'd trusted their judgment and signed without reviewing the engineering report myself. 14 surgical clips had failed over 3 years. 14 patients. We'd settled all 14 cases quietly, paid out $23 million in total, and never issued a recall, never admitted fault. Margaret Chen had been case number 8. Grace had been exonerated of medical negligence. The fault was clearly the equipment. But the trauma of losing a patient, of watching someone die because of a device failure, had destroyed her ability to continue practicing medicine. Psychological evaluation included in the file. Dr. Thompson exhibits symptoms of severe post-traumatic stress disorder. She experiences panic attacks when presented with surgical instruments. Patient reports intrusive thoughts, nightmares, and overwhelming guilt, despite intellectual understanding that the equipment failure was beyond her control. Recommend long-term therapy and permanent leave from surgical practice. Grace had lost her license not because she'd done anything wrong, but because she couldn't psychologically recover from doing everything right and still watching someone die. Because of me. Because I'd chosen profit over safety. The file went on. Grace had married David Thompson 6 months after losing her license. David was a firefighter, 34, decorated for bravery. They'd had a quiet wedding. Witnesses: Tom Bailey and Sarah Thompson. No mention of a pregnancy, no birth certificate for Lily and Grace's name. I flipped to the section on Lily Thompson. Birth certificate listed mother as Sarah Thompson. Father, unknown. Born 7 years ago in a Burlington clinic. Sarah had died of an overdose 6 months later. Grace had filed for custody of her niece. Adoption finalized when Lily was 8 months old. Grace had lost her career, then lost her sister, then took in her sister's baby and raised her as her own. Then, 3 years ago, David Thompson died in a fire. Ran into a burning building to save a family of 5. Got them all out, went back for the family dog. The floor collapsed. He died from smoke inhalation and severe burns. Grace had been left with nothing except a 7-year-old child and $47,000 in medical debt from Lily's asthma treatments. The final section of the report was her employment history for the past 3 years. Night shift at a grocery store, cleaning houses, working in restaurant kitchens. A brief stint at a nursing home. I read that section twice. She'd been fired from the nursing home under suspicious circumstances. An elderly patient's gold cross had gone missing. It was found in a laundry cart that Grace had been using. She'd maintained her innocence, but they'd let her go anyway. I sat back, the report falling from my hands. Grace Thompson hadn't come to my house seeking revenge. She'd come seeking survival, and I'd tested her like she was a criminal. The intercom on my desk buzzed. Martha's voice. "Robert, you have a visitor. Dr. Mitchell is here." Sarah Mitchell, our family physician, Helen's closest friend. "Send her in." Sarah entered, her medical bag in hand, her face concerned. She was 45, graying at the temples, with the kind eyes that had seen too much suffering to judge anyone anymore. "Martha said you weren't feeling well." "I'm fine." "You look like hell, Robert. When's the last time you slept?" "I sleep." "How much?" She pulled out her stethoscope without waiting for permission, listened to my heart, frowned. "Your heartbeat is irregular. When's the last time you had a full cardiac workup?" "I don't need—" "Robert, I was Helen's friend before I was your doctor. She asked me to take care of you. Let me do my job." I submitted to the examination in silence. Blood pressure, reflex tests. She pulled a small portable EKG from her bag. 5 minutes later, she sat across from me with an expression that made my stomach drop. "You have arrhythmia, likely atrial fibrillation. You need a full workup at the hospital. Today." "I'm busy." "You could have a stroke or heart failure. This isn't optional, Robert." "How long have I had it?" "Based on what I'm seeing, months, maybe years." "You haven't been to see me for your annual physical in 3 years." "Because I didn't care. Because if my heart gave out, it would save me the trouble of continuing to wake up in an empty house every morning." "I'll make an appointment. Today." "Sarah, Helen died and you gave up." Her voice cracked. "I watched it happen. You're killing yourself slowly and I can't stand by and watch anymore. Get your ass to the hospital today or I'm calling an ambulance." I'd never heard Sarah swear before. "Fine, I'll go." She stood, then paused at the door. "Robert, can I ask you something?" "What?" "Grace Thompson. How did she come to work here?" My defenses went up immediately. "Why?" "Because Helen asked me to find her." Sarah's words hung in the air like a bomb. "About 6 months before Helen died, she made me promise that if anything happened to her, I'd make sure Grace was okay. That Grace would find her way to you." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. "What are you talking about?" Sarah closed the door, came back and sat down. "Helen was at the hospital a lot toward the end. Chemo, radiation, appointments. Grace was doing rotations in oncology. She'd lost her surgical license but was trying to stay connected to medicine somehow. Helen never mentioned her." "Helen didn't mention a lot of things." Sarah's eyes were wet. "But she talked to me. She said Grace was special, that she had the saddest eyes but the kindest heart, that Grace would sit with patients who had no family, hold their hands, read to them. She did it on her own time, unpaid." "Why did Helen want Grace to find me?" "Because Helen knew she was dying, and she knew you'd die right along with her unless someone intervened." Sarah pulled a tissue from her pocket, wiped her eyes. She said, "Grace understands loss. She'll understand Robert. And maybe, if I ask her, she'll watch over him for me." "You're saying Helen asked Grace to—" "What? Babysit me from beyond the grave?" "I'm saying Helen loved you enough to make sure you wouldn't be alone. She asked Grace to check on you, if the opportunity ever arose, to make sure you were okay." "And Grace agreed?" "Grace promised. Helen died 2 days later. I think it was one of the last conversations Helen had with anyone besides you." I stood up, paced to the window. Down below I could see Grace and Lily in the garden. Grace was teaching her daughter how to prune the rose bushes. Lily's laughter carried up through the glass. "Does Grace know you told me this?" "No, and she never would. Grace doesn't want your gratitude, Robert. She's just keeping a promise to a dying woman who showed her kindness once." Sarah stood to leave. "Get to the hospital. And Robert, Grace Thompson is exactly who she appears to be. A good woman who's had a hard life. Don't punish her for being kind." After Sarah left, I went down to the garden. Grace looked up, startled, when I approached. Lily was covered in dirt, grinning. "Mr. Harrison, I'm sorry, we should have asked permission before. Did you know my wife?" The question stopped her cold. Her face went pale. Yes, briefly, at the hospital. She asked you to watch over me." Grace's eyes filled with tears. "Dr. Mitchell told you. Why didn't you say anything?" "Because you would have thought I was here out of pity, or obligation, or worse, that I was using your wife's memory to manipulate you." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, leaving a streak of dirt. "I came here because I promised a dying woman I'd check on her husband, but I stayed because I saw you, and you reminded me of myself after David died. So lost, you didn't even know you were drowning." "I destroyed your career," I said. "My company, my signature, the equipment that failed during your surgery. I approved the cheaper materials." Grace's face went white. She set down the pruning shears carefully, like she was afraid her hands might shake. "You knew?" "I had you investigated. I just found out this morning." "So, you know everything." Her voice was hollow. "The lawsuit, the license, all of it." "Yes." "Then you also know I came here planning to hate you." The words came out broken. "When Tom said he could get me a job at the Harrison estate, I jumped at it. I don't even know what I thought, that I'd see the man whose company destroyed my life and it would make sense somehow. That I could look you in the eye and blame you for everything. And I got here and you weren't a monster. You were just sad. So sad. Like me." Grace's tears fell freely now. "I couldn't hate you. I tried. God, I tried. But then I'd see you eating alone, talking to your wife's photograph, walking the halls at 3 in the morning because you couldn't sleep. And I couldn't." Lily tugged on Grace's sleeve. "Mommy, why are you crying?" "I'm okay, baby. Can you go inside and wash your hands? I'll be right there." Lily looked between us, then ran toward the house. Grace and I stood in Helen's garden, surrounded by roses neither of us knew how to tend properly, both of us broken by the same chain of events that had started with my signature on a piece of paper 8 years ago. "I'm sorry," I said, "for what happened to you, for Margaret Chen, for all of it. I know you are. I can see it in your face every time you look at me. That's the problem, Mr. Harrison. We're both drowning in guilt for things we can't change. And I don't know how to save you when I haven't figured out how to save myself." She walked away, leaving me alone in the garden with dead roses and a truth I didn't know what to do with. Helen had sent Grace to save me, but I was the one who'd destroyed her first. 3 weeks passed in careful silence, punctuated by shared pain neither of us knew how to name. I went to the hospital as Sarah had demanded. The cardiac workup confirmed atrial fibrillation, moderate to severe. The cardiologist recommended immediate surgery to correct the rhythm. I refused. He gave me medication and a stern lecture about stroke risk and said I had maybe 6 months before the condition would deteriorate to critical. I told no one except Sarah, who looked at me with Helen's disappointed eyes and said, "You're a coward, Robert Harrison." She was right. Meanwhile, Grace continued working. We didn't speak about what I'd discovered. We moved around each other like ghosts haunting the same house, both afraid to reach out, both drowning alone. Then Lily got sick. It happened on a Tuesday. I was in my study when I heard Grace's voice from upstairs, sharp with panic. "Lily, breathe. Baby, look at me. Breathe." The sound that followed made my blood freeze. A wet, rattling wheeze, struggling lungs. I took the stairs 2 at a time. Grace was on the floor of their bedroom, Lily in her arms. The child's lips were blue. Grace had an inhaler pressed to Lily's mouth, counting desperately. 1, 2, 3, breathe. Come on, baby. 4, 5, 6. The inhaler was empty. Grace, I need to get her to the hospital. Grace's voice was eerily calm, but her hands shook. Now, she's not responding to the rescue inhaler. This is different. I pulled out my phone, called 911. This is Robert Harrison, 1247 Marlborough Street. 7-year-old female, severe respiratory distress, history of asthma. We need an ambulance immediately. Sir, is the patient conscious? I looked at Lily. Her eyes were wide, terrified, but she was conscious. Yes. Ambulance is en route. Estimated arrival 7 minutes. 7 minutes. Lily might not have 7 minutes. I'm driving her. Grace stood, Lily in her arms. The child weighed nothing. It'll be faster. My car. I'm driving. I was already moving, grabbing my keys. You stay with her. We made it to Boston Memorial in 12 minutes. I pulled up to the emergency entrance, hazard lights flashing, and Grace was out of the car before it stopped moving. I need help. My daughter can't breathe. A team swarmed them. Gurney, oxygen mask, vitals being called out. O2 sat 72%, heart rate 140, respiratory rate 38. They wheeled Lily through double doors. Grace tried to follow. A nurse stopped her. Ma'am, you need to wait here while we stabilize her. I'm not leaving my daughter. Grace. I put my hand on her shoulder. She spun around and I saw the terror. The same terror I'd seen in the investigation report, the trauma that had ended her career, a patient dying while she stood by, helpless. I can't lose her, Grace whispered. She's all I have left. You won't. They're good here. Let them work. She nodded, but I could feel her trembling. A doctor emerged 20 minutes later. Young, competent-looking, with the exhausted eyes of someone who'd worked too many shifts. Mrs. Thompson? How is she? Stable. We've got her on oxygen and administered albuterol and corticosteroids, but this wasn't a typical asthma attack. The doctor consulted his tablet. When's the last time she had a full workup? Grace's face crumbled. 3 months ago. I couldn't afford the follow-up appointments. I need to run additional tests, chest X-ray, pulmonary function tests, blood work. I'm concerned this might be something more than asthma. What do you mean, more than asthma? I can't say until I see the results, but I'd like to admit her for observation at least overnight. Grace's voice broke. I don't have insurance. Not anymore. I can pay something, but don't worry about it, I said. I'll handle it. Grace turned to me. Mr. Harrison, I can't let you. Yes, you can. Do the tests, I told the doctor. All of them. Whatever she needs. The doctor nodded and disappeared. Grace stared at me, tears streaming down her face. Why are you doing this? Because it's my fault you can't afford to take care of her. Because my company destroyed your career. Because I owe you more than I could ever repay. I don't want your guilt money. Too bad. You're getting it anyway. She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it, looked down at her hands. If anything happens to her, nothing's going to happen to her. She's going to be fine. But even as I said it, I knew I was making a promise I had no power to keep. Just like I'd made promises about medical device safety that I hadn't kept. Just like I'd promised Helen I'd take care of our son, and Michael hadn't spoken to me in 3 years. I was good at promises and terrible at keeping them. Grace and I sat in the waiting room in silence. She wouldn't look at me, just stared at her hands, at the wedding ring she still wore, at the floor tiles worn smooth by thousands of other terrified parents. At midnight, the doctor returned. His face told me everything before he opened his mouth. Mrs. Thompson, I need you to come with me. We have the test results. Grace stood on shaking legs. I stood with her. I'd like to speak with you privately, the doctor said. He can hear it, Grace said. Whatever it is. The doctor hesitated, then nodded. Led us to a small consultation room, the kind with boxes of tissues on every surface because they knew what conversations happened here. Lily's chest X-ray showed abnormalities. We ran additional blood tests. He paused. The pause that doctors use when they're about to destroy your world. Mrs. Thompson, Lily has acute lymphoblastic leukemia. The room tilted. No. Grace's voice was barely a whisper. No, she has asthma. Just asthma. The respiratory distress was caused by her compromised immune system and enlarged lymph nodes pressing on her airways. The good news is we caught it early. All has a high cure rate in children, especially with immediate treatment. What kind of treatment? Chemotherapy, possibly radiation. If those aren't sufficient, we may need to consider a bone marrow transplant. How much time do we have? We need to start treatment within the week. I've already contacted our pediatric oncology department. Grace made a sound like something breaking. She put her hand over her mouth, bent forward, and sobbed. I found myself moving, putting my arms around her, letting her collapse against me while she cried for her daughter, for the unfairness of a 7-year-old child facing cancer, for the medical bills that would bury them both. How much? I asked the doctor over Grace's shoulder. The treatment. Total cost. With insurance? She doesn't have insurance. How much? Conservative estimate, $200,000, but that's assuming standard protocol. If she needs a transplant, it could be significantly more. Grace pulled back, looked at me with red eyes. I can't let you. You can, and you will. Not another word about it. Robert. It was the first time she'd used my first name. My company helped destroy your career. The least I can do is help save your daughter's life. She shook her head, but there was no fight left in her. Just exhaustion and terror, and the weight of loving someone more than your own life. The doctor cleared his throat. There's something else. For the bone marrow transplant, if it comes to that, we'll need to test family members for compatibility. Mrs. Thompson, are you Lily's biological mother? Grace went very still. No, I'm her adoptive mother. Her biological mother was my sister. She died when Lily was an infant. Do you know who the biological father was? No. My sister never told me. The doctor made a note. We'll test you regardless. Sometimes aunts can be a partial match, but we may need to expand the search to a registry if... Do whatever you need to do, I said. Cost is not a factor. Time is not a factor. Save this child. The doctor nodded and left us alone in the room with tissues and hard chairs and the impossible weight of what came next. Grace looked at me, really looked at me. Why are you doing this? Because someone has to. Because you shouldn't have to face this alone. I'm not your responsibility. Maybe not. But Lily is innocent. And I've spent 8 years letting innocent people suffer because of my mistakes. I won't do it again. Grace wiped her eyes, straightened her spine. Became someone I recognized from the investigation report. Dr. Grace Thompson, the surgeon who'd fought to save lives even when it cost her everything. Okay, she said, but I'm paying you back. Every cent. Even if it takes the rest of my life. Deal. We shook hands like we were signing a contract. Her hand was small and cold in mine. I didn't let go, neither did she. Lily started chemotherapy 3 days later. I watched Grace transform. The quiet, careful woman who'd moved through my house like a ghost became something harder. A warrior? She slept in a chair beside Lily's hospital bed, held her daughter's hand through every treatment, sang to her when the nausea got bad. I visited every day, brought books Lily liked, puzzles to pass the time. Grace accepted my presence without comment, too exhausted to argue. 2 weeks into treatment, the oncologist ordered bone marrow compatibility testing for potential transplant. Grace tested negative. Not a match. "We'll expand to the registry," Dr. Patel said, "but I have to warn you, finding a perfect match can take months. Lily may not have months." That night I found Grace in the hospital chapel, not praying, just sitting in the silence, staring at nothing. "Test me," I said. She looked up, confused. "What?" "For the bone marrow. Test me. Robert, you're not family. The chances of you matching are negligible. I know. Test me anyway." She studied my face. "Why?" "Because I need to do something. Because watching you go through this alone is killing me. Because—" I stopped. The truth was too complicated, too tangled in guilt and something else I didn't have a name for yet. "Okay," she said quietly. "Thank you." They drew my blood the next morning. Results would take 3 days. On day 2, Vicky appeared at the hospital. I was sitting in Lily's room while Grace took a shower in the family bathroom. Lily was asleep, bald from the chemotherapy, her small chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. "Robert?" Vicky stood in the doorway, impeccably dressed as always. "Martha told me where to find you." "What do you want, Vicky?" She entered, glanced at Lily, then at me. "I got the background check on Grace Thompson." "I already know everything." "Do you?" Vicky pulled a folder from her bag. "Did you know she was fired from a nursing home for theft? That an elderly patient accused her of stealing a gold cross?" "She didn't do it." "How do you know?" "Because I know her." Vicky's laugh was bitter. "You've known her for 2 months. I've known you for 20 years. And I'm telling you, this woman is dangerous." "Dangerous how?" "By caring for her dying daughter, by keeping a promise to my dead wife." "By making you care about her." Vicky's voice cracked. "Don't you see what she's doing? The sick child, the noble widow act, the connection to Helen, it's all designed to get under your skin, and it's working." "You're wrong." "Am I?" Vicky moved closer. "Robert, I care about you. I've always cared about you. When your father died, when the company almost went under, when Helen got sick, I was there. I've always been there." Something in her voice made me look at her differently, really see her. "Vicky, I love you." The words came out rushed, desperate. "I've loved you since I was 22 years old. I watched you marry Helen, and I told myself it was fine, that I just wanted to be near you in whatever capacity I could. But now Helen's gone, and this woman shows up out of nowhere, and I'm watching you fall for her, and I can't do this anymore." The room was silent except for the beeping of Lily's monitors. "I don't love you," I said as gently as I could. "Not like that. You're like a daughter to me, Vicky. You always have been." Her face crumpled. "A daughter? After everything I've done for you, everything I've sacrificed. I'm sorry. I never meant to." "No, you never mean to hurt anyone. You just do it anyway." She grabbed her purse, headed for the door, then turned back. "That woman is using you, Robert. And when she's gotten everything she can, she'll destroy you, just like Amanda did. But this time, I won't be there to pick up the pieces." She left. Grace emerged from the bathroom 5 minutes later, her hair wet, wearing the same clothes she'd worn for 2 days. She looked at my face. "What happened?" "Nothing. Vicky stopped by. She doesn't like me very much. She doesn't know you. Neither do you. Not really." Grace sat in the chair beside Lily's bed, took her daughter's small hand. "Robert, you need to stop doing this." "Doing what?" "Trying to save me. trying to fix what happened 8 years ago. You can't change the past. I can try to make the future better. By what? Paying my bills? That's guilt, not kindness. She looked at me with those storm cloud eyes. I don't want your guilt money. I don't want you here out of obligation. Then why do you want me here? The question hung between us. Grace's answer was interrupted by Dr. Patel entering with a tablet and an expression I couldn't read. Mrs. Thompson, Mr. Harrison, I have the preliminary bone marrow test results. My heart stopped. Mr. Harrison, you're a match. Perfect match. 10 out of 10 antigens. The room spun. That's not possible. The odds are extremely rare for unrelated individuals. 1 in a million, sometimes higher. Dr. Patel looked between us. Are you absolutely certain there's no biological relation? I've never met Grace until 2 months ago. And Lily's biological mother was Grace's sister, who died 8 years ago. I never knew her. Dr. Patel frowned. I'd like to run an extended DNA panel. Because the match is so perfect, I want to rule out any unknown family connections. Fine, whatever you need. After the doctor left, Grace and I sat in stunned silence. 1 in a million, she whispered. Apparently I'm lucky. Or this is Helen. Grace's voice was soft, wondering. Watching over both of us? I wanted to dismiss it as coincidence, magical thinking, grief making patterns out of randomness. But I remembered Helen in those final weeks, remembered her asking about Grace, remembered Sarah saying Helen had asked her to make sure Grace was okay. Had Helen known something we didn't? The extended DNA results came back the next day. Dr. Patel called me into her office. Her face was pale. Mr. Harrison, I don't know how to tell you this. Just say it. You're not just a bone marrow match for Lily. You're her biological father. The world stopped. That's impossible. The DNA doesn't lie. You share 50% of Lily's genetic material. Dr. Patel pulled up the results on her screen. There's no doubt. You are her father. But I never, Grace's sister, I never even met Sarah Thompson. Are you certain? I tried to think. 8 years ago, where had I been? What had I been doing? 8 years ago, Helen had just been diagnosed with cancer. I'd been devastated, drinking too much, barely holding myself together, and Vicky had been there. Vicky, who'd come to the house after a particularly bad day, who'd brought scotch and sympathy, we'd both been drunk, grieving in our own ways. One night, one terrible grief-fueled mistake. The next morning we'd both pretended it never happened. Oh, God, I whispered. Mr. Harrison, I need to speak with Victoria Pemberton, immediately. I found Vicky at the office. She was in the middle of a board meeting. I didn't care. Everyone out, I said. The board members looked at Vicky. She nodded, face white. They filed out. Robert, 8 years ago, after Helen's diagnosis, you came to my house. Vicky's hands started shaking. We were drunk. We made a mistake. And then you disappeared for a year. Said you were taking time off. I moved closer. Vicky, were you pregnant? She closed her eyes. Tell me the truth. Were you pregnant with my child? Yes. The word was barely audible. What happened to the baby? I gave her up. Vicky's voice broke. I couldn't tell you. Helen was dying, you were falling apart, and I knew if I told you, you'd marry me out of obligation. I didn't want that. So I went away, had the baby, and I left her at a clinic in Vermont. Sarah Thompson's clinic. Vicky's head snapped up. How did you? Sarah worked there. She took the baby. Your baby. Our baby. I could barely breathe. And when Sarah died, Grace adopted her. Grace has been raising our daughter for 7 years, and neither of us knew. Vicky collapsed into a chair. Lily, that little girl in the hospital, that's our daughter, and she's dying. We stared at each other, two people who'd made one terrible mistake 8 years ago and were only now discovering the consequences. Does Grace know? Vicky whispered. No. She thinks Lily's father is unknown. I ran my hands through my hair. Jesus Christ, Vicky, we have to tell her. She'll hate us both. She'll hate me more. I'm the one who destroyed her career and unknowingly fathered the child she's been raising. I looked at Vicky. But we don't have a choice. She needs to know the truth. What about Lily? One thing at a time. I headed for the door. Robert, wait. Vicky's voice stopped me. I'm sorry. For all of it. For not telling you. For hating Grace when she was just trying to save my daughter. I'm so sorry. We're all sorry, Vicky. But sorry doesn't change what happens next. I drove back to the hospital with the weight of a truth that would detonate Grace's world. Lily wasn't just the daughter Grace had adopted and loved. She was mine. And somewhere in God's twisted sense of humor, the woman I was falling in love with had been raising my child for 7 years while I'd been destroying her life from afar. I told Grace the truth in the hospital chapel. It was 2 a.m. Lily was sleeping, stabilized for the moment. Grace had finally agreed to leave her bedside for coffee. We sat in the empty chapel, stained glass windows dark above us, and I destroyed what was left of her world. There's something you need to know about the bone marrow match. She looked at me over her paper cup. You're a perfect match. I know. It's a miracle. It's not a miracle. It's biology. I took a breath. Grace, I'm Lily's biological father. The cup slipped from her hands. Coffee spread across the floor like blood. What? The DNA test. I'm her father. And Victoria Pemberton is her biological mother. Grace stood up so fast her chair fell backward. No, that's not. Sarah never said. Sarah didn't know who the father was. Vicky gave the baby up anonymously, left her at the clinic where Sarah worked. Sarah took Lily home, and when she died, you adopted her. I stayed seated, kept my voice calm even though inside I was screaming. Neither Vicky nor I knew what happened to the baby. We didn't know until the DNA test. You and Vicky. Grace's voice was hollow. You slept with her. Once, 8 years ago, the week after Helen was diagnosed. We were both drunk, both grieving. It was a mistake that resulted in my daughter. Our daughter. Don't. Grace's hand came up like a wall between us. Don't you dare claim her now. You don't get to be her father just because genetics says so. She's mine. I raised her. I sat up with her through every asthma attack, every nightmare, every fever. I'm her mother. I know you are. I'm not trying to take that away from you. Then what are you trying to do, Robert? What is this? She was crying now, angry tears streaming down her face. First you destroy my career. Then you feel guilty and pay for everything. Then you turn out to be some kind of miraculous bone marrow match. And now you're telling me the child I've loved for 7 years is actually yours? How much more complicated can this possibly get? I don't know, but we have to deal with what is, not what we wish it was. What about Vicky? Does she know? Yes, I just told her. And what does she want? She wants to save Lily. That's all either of us wants. Grace laughed, a broken sound. The woman who's hated me since the day we met is Lily's biological mother. The man whose company destroyed my life is Lily's biological father. And I'm just, what? The woman who happened to adopt her when everyone else gave up? You're her mother, the only one she's ever known. Until now. Grace wiped her eyes. You're going to tell her, aren't you? After the transplant, after she's better, you're going to tell her you're her father. I don't know. That's not a decision I can make alone. Damn right it's not. Grace's voice turned cold, hard. That's my daughter in there. Mine. And if you think for 1 second I'm going to let you and Vicky waltz in and— Grace, stop. I stood, moved closer. She backed away. Nobody is trying to take Lily from you, but she deserves to know the truth. Maybe not now, maybe not for years, but eventually. And what about us? The question came out small, broken. What about us? This thing that's been happening. This, she gestured between us. I was starting to feel something, starting to think maybe I could trust you. Trust this. But now I find out you're Lily's father, and I don't know if what I'm feeling is real or just gratitude or— I don't know what it is anymore. I'd been afraid of this, afraid that the truth would poison whatever fragile connection we'd built. What you feel is real, I said quietly. What I feel is real. The rest is just complicated. Complicated. She laughed again, bitter. That's one word for it. The door to the chapel opened. A nurse. Mrs. Thompson, Lily's awake. She's asking for you. Grace left without another word. I sat alone in the chapel and prayed to a God I wasn't sure I believed in anymore. Prayed that somehow we could all survive this truth. The next week was agony. Grace barely spoke to me. When I visited Lily, Grace would find reasons to leave the room. The warmth that had been growing between us froze over. Vicky came to the hospital, asked to see Lily. Grace refused. She's not ready to meet you, Grace said, her voice ice. And I'm not ready to explain why the woman who's been hostile to me is suddenly interested in my daughter's welfare. Our daughter, Vicky said softly. She's mine until you can prove you deserve her. Vicky nodded, devastated, and left. 3 days before the scheduled bone marrow transplant, Martha collapsed at the estate. Tom found her in the kitchen, unconscious. Stroke. They rushed her to Boston Memorial, same hospital where Lily was being treated. I sat in yet another waiting room, watching another person I cared about fight for their life. The neurologist came out after midnight. Mr. Harrison, Martha is stable, but we need to discuss something. We ran a full panel of tests, and there's a genetic marker that— He paused. Has Martha ever mentioned anything about your biological family? What are you talking about? The genetic testing shows Martha shares significant DNA with you. Specifically, she appears to be your biological mother. I couldn't speak. I know this is a shock, but given her condition, I thought you should know. She may want to tell you herself when she wakes up. Martha woke up 6 hours later. I was beside her bed. Robert, her voice was weak, slurred from the stroke. I'm so sorry. Is it true? Are you my mother? Tears leaked from her eyes. Yes. How? I was 16. Your father, your grandfather, he was 19. His family was wealthy. Mine was nothing. When I got pregnant, they paid my parents to give you up. Your father's wife couldn't have children. She raised you as her own. Martha's hand found mine. I asked to stay on as staff, just to be near you, to watch you grow up. I never meant to tell you, never wanted to hurt you. You've been my mother my entire life, and I've been calling you Martha. I didn't deserve to be called anything else. I gave you up. You were 16. You didn't have a choice. I held her hand. This woman who'd raised me from the shadows, who'd loved me without ever asking for acknowledgement. You stayed. That's what matters. You stayed. I couldn't leave you. You were mine. Grace appeared in the doorway. She'd heard everything. Our eyes met. Both of us raising children that genetics said were ours. Circumstances said weren't. Both of us learning that biology mattered less than showing up. I'm sorry, Grace said quietly, for shutting you out, for being angry at you for something that happened before we even met. You had every right to be angry. Maybe. But it doesn't change the fact that Lily needs you, needs your bone marrow, needs, she swallowed, needs her father, even if she doesn't know that's who you are yet. And what about what you need? Grace came into the room, sat in the chair beside mine. I need to save my daughter, our daughter, and I need to stop being so angry at the world that I push away everyone trying to help. I need to stop trying to fix the past with money and grand gestures, I said, and start just being present. So we're both broken people trying to save a 7-year-old girl who deserves better than either of us. Sounds about right. Martha's voice, weak but amused. Sounds like family to me. The bone marrow transplant was scheduled for the following Monday. Sunday night, I sat with Lily while Grace slept. The little girl was awake, watching me with those brown eyes that I now realized were my eyes. Mr. Harrison? Yes, sweetheart. Are you sad because you're old and alone? The question was so earnest, so pure, it broke me. I used to be, but I'm not alone anymore. Because Mommy and me live with you now. Because I have people I care about. Your mom, you, Martha and Tom, even grumpy Miss Vicky. Lily giggled. She is grumpy. She's had a hard life. Sometimes people get grumpy when they're sad. Like you were? Like I was. But you're not sad anymore. I looked at this child, my child, fighting cancer with more courage than I'd shown in 60 years of living, and I realized something. No, I'm not sad anymore. I'm terrified. But that's different. What are you scared of? Losing the people I love. Mommy says love means being scared but doing it anyway. Like how Daddy ran into the fire even though he was scared. Because the people inside needed him. David Thompson had been braver than I'd ever be. But maybe I could try. Your daddy was a hero. I know. Mommy tells me stories about him. She says even though he's gone, he's still watching over us. I believe that. Mr. Harrison, after you give me your bone marrow and I get better, can I call you something besides Mr. Harrison? It's too long. My throat closed. What would you like to call me? Maybe Uncle Rob. Since you're like family now? I'd like that very much. She smiled, squeezed my hand with her small fingers and closed her eyes. Grace stood in the doorway. She'd been watching, listening. Uncle Rob, she said softly. It's a start. Is it enough? For now, we'll figure out the rest later. After we save her life. And after that? After that, maybe we figure out how to save each other. She came into the room, sat beside me, and for the first time since I'd told her the truth, she let me hold her hand. We sat together in the hospital room, two broken people and the child who'd brought us together, and waited for Monday morning. Waited for the chance to do something right. Waited for the possibility of redemption through bone marrow and truth and love we didn't know how to name yet. Martha's words echoed in my mind. Sounds like family to me. Maybe it was. Maybe, despite everything, we were becoming exactly that. A family built not on blood alone, but on the harder, braver choice to show up and stay. Even when it hurt. Especially when it hurt. Sometimes the hardest truth we face isn't that we've made mistakes. It's that we've spent years punishing ourselves for them while life kept offering us chances to start over. Robert Harrison thought 60 was too late for second chances, too old for new love, too broken to deserve happiness. But a widow named Grace and a 7-year-old girl with his eyes taught him something most of us forget. Family isn't about perfection or bloodlines or getting it right the first time. It's about showing up scared and doing it anyway. It's about letting people see your broken parts and trusting them not to run. It's about learning that too late is just a lie we tell ourselves when we're afraid to try again. Helen knew what she was doing when she sent Grace to Robert. She understood that healing doesn't come from fixing the past. It comes from finding the courage to build something new from the wreckage. Every person in that hospital room, Robert, Grace, Vicky, Martha, little Lily fighting cancer, they were all searching for the same thing: permission to forgive themselves and choose love over loneliness. What would you do if you discovered it's never too late to find your family? Have you ever been given a second chance you were too afraid to take?